Okay, I think we can get started now. So thank you for joining me today in our webinar, Getting Started in FCS Express 6 Flow Cytometry RUO. My name is Juan Vasquez and I am the Customer Support Manager for Novo Software. I'm extremely honored to provide to you this opportunity to show you a basic introduction to FCS Express. We just recently released FCS Express 6, so I will try to show you a basic overview of the basic functions of FCS Express 6, but also try to show you some of the new features that are now available to FCS Express. I won't be able to go into too much detail about some of these new features. We will have several upcoming webinars that focus on all of these new features and go into much more detail, but I will try to provide a high-level overview of how you can add these different objects, these different features into your analysis and make it produce results for your data. Okay, so just a little introduction before we start. So for those of you that aren't familiar, FCS Express is made by a company called Novo Software. So Novo Software is located in Glendale, California, just outside of Los Angeles. We've been around in the business for almost 20 years now, and we serve about 4,000 to 5,000 customers globally with a staff of about 25 employees, most of them located in Glendale, but we have several that are located either throughout the US or in Europe to better serve our customers. So for those of you that aren't familiar with FCS Express, what FCS Express is, it's data analysis and presentation software for flow cytometry and image cytometry. And the idea is that FCS Express incorporates many of the different standards, workflow, or just different tools that you would find in Microsoft Office, any of its suite products like PowerPoint or Word or Excel. And we use those same techniques to help you build your cytometry analysis. What we also like to do within FCS Express is we try to incorporate a lot of different features into one software, so that way everything you need to do can be pretty much done within this one software. So if you need to export something to PowerPoint for a presentation that you have upcoming, you could do that directly here in FCS Express. You don't have to copy and paste or export to something else to prepare your analysis for a presentation. If you need to make a high-res image for a publication, you don't need to take an object and import it into Photoshop to manipulate it or to get it how you need to. You can actually do that here. You can format a plot, make it as visually pleasing as possible, and you can export it in as high of a resolution as needed for publication. FCS Express 6 is now compatible with Windows and Mac OS, so that's one of the new features. We've been able to incorporate this for as a native application for the Mac OS, and we've done that through a lot of feedback from our customers. So we're extremely excited to finally be able to have something for the Mac platform, and we hope you are too. FCS Express 6 is available in an RUO or imaging software, and it's also available since Novo Software is registered as a medical device manufacturer with the FDA. FCS Express is listed as listed with an IVD classification with the FDA as well. And we'll also have a webinar coming up as soon as we have FCS Express 6 available IVD, probably later on in the winter. Okay. FCS Express will also offer full 21 CFR Part 11 compliance. So anyone that needs any type of audit trail capability, electronic signatures, login and password capability, that can all be available through our security options, which provides a lot of this 21 CFR Part 11 compliance. Okay. So again, a lot of the basic functionality in FCS Express can be done through a lot of the same techniques that you would do in PowerPoint. So you would insert different objects into PowerPoint just to create your presentation, and the idea is similar here, where you could just insert different objects from the insert button. And in a couple minutes, I'll start talking about the interface and how we can familiarize ourselves with FCS Express, and then how we can just navigate through the software. Okay. Within the software, as I mentioned, we do have a lot of features. So we have the ability to use spreadsheets. We can export directly to PowerPoint, to PDF. We can create images. We can also integrate spreadsheets, where the spreadsheets have a lot of the same functionality in as Microsoft Excel. We can do a lot of the same tools as Microsoft Office, where we can use bar charts, pie charts to help analyze our data and display our data. We have scatter plots. We have scatter plots with regression models built into the scatter plots. We have the ability to perform cell cycle and proliferation with their own modeling components built into it. And also new to FCS Express 6 is the ability to analyze native AMNIS data. AMNIS bill of report from data that's native in the CIF and DAF files that come specifically from that platform. Okay? So some of the new features that are available now in FCS Express, as I mentioned, we do now have a native Mac version. Um, we also have the ability now to do a lot of the same transformation clustering and R integration tools that are very popular now. So specifically, we have the ability to do k-means, PCA, and TISNI to help cluster. And we do have the ability to integrate with R to help add new parameters or to provide clustering for your data as well. We have the ability to create these integrated spreadsheets where we can do a lot of the same functions that you would see in Excel. You can use a lot of the same tools, conditional formatting, a lot of the same formulas and functions that are available in Microsoft Excel can now be performed in these integrated spreadsheets in FCS Express 6. In a minute, I'm going to show you a couple examples of just so you can get an idea of some of the new tools that are going to be available. And one of them is the heat map. And the idea with the heat map is now that we can add overlays. And I'll talk about that in a second, where we can add two different or multiple files, and each one can be represented by a different color within a well. And what we can also do is we can have that radius either expand or contract based off another statistic, so that we can get an idea of different statistics on different levels within that heat map. We now have the ability to create multiple gates and have each gate specific for a particular data file. So those of you that are familiar with the gating structure within FCS Express, you probably know that our gating is universal. So as long as the parameters match from tube to tube, you can use the same gate across your tubes. You don't necessarily need to recreate a gate multiple times just to give you the same information for each tube. But what we can do now is we can actually make these gates data specific, so that way if you're looking at one gate on one tube, it doesn't necessarily have to be the same for the other tube. So each one can be completely independent and one from one another, but they're still the same gate. Okay. A really cool feature that I'm extremely excited about is our standard operating procedure, or our SOP builder. And what the SOP builder is, it'll allow you to build this analysis where you can include steps within this analysis to help standardize and build different steps into this particular analysis, and each step has criteria that need to be met, so that way the user can't proceed to another step until the previous step has been completed according to different conditions that we can build as part of that step. I'll try to briefly show that to you in a second. Okay. And then what we can also do is we can now link markers together. I'll try to show that to you later on in the presentation if we can do it quickly. And overall, we have a lot of general usability improvements. As you can see, the software is very crisp, very clear. We've redesigned all the icons. We're using a new default font. The ribbon has a bright red, flat red color, and it's completely redesigned from an aesthetic point of view. Okay. So at this point, what I'd like to do is I'd like to show you some examples. So the first example I'd like to show you is going to be a combination of two different features that are going to be new for FCS Express 6. So here's an example of a particular titration where we have 4 different concentrations, and what we're doing is we're using all this data. We're tabulating all this data into a spreadsheet. So this spreadsheet is just simply another object that you can insert, just like any plot that you can insert in FCS Express. And within this spreadsheet, we can simply just add different stats in here. And the way we can just add stats is simply just by dragging and dropping. We can drag data into this cell. So for example, if I just take this data over here, I could just drag this over here. And I can tell FCS Express, what parameter, what gate, and what statistic do I want for each file that I'm dragging and dropping. And you can see that data automatically updates. Okay. What we can also do is we can do a lot of the same functionality as we would in Excel, where if we select our cells, now you can see that we have some tabs up here in the ribbon where we can provide some additional formatting, or we can do some manipulation of that data. We can do some calculations, whether we want to do the sum or an average. A lot of the same type of features that we can do in Excel. What we can also do is we can do a lot of the same formula creations that you would do, where we can just specify what kind of cells, make up a formula, and do whatever math we need to do for that cell. But what we can also do is we can simply just copy and paste. So if I just want to Control C and Control V, I can simply just copy and paste, and you'll see that the variables for that formula automatically update for the cells in that row. Okay. So also within this example, I just kind of wanted to take this opportunity to show you the fact that we have these data specific gates. So again, our gates are universal, so as long as your parameters match from tube to tube, from file to file, you can actually just carry these across. All our gates update in real time. So if I just move this around, you should see all my data update in the plots, because all these different files, these are 4 different files, and they all have forward scatter, side scatter, obviously. So I created my gate based off of that, and you can see this all this data automatically updates. But I also have a negative and positive gate within each of these plots, and you can see that if I move these around, these will move too. But that may not necessarily what I want to be, because obviously as I increase my concentration for my antibody, you're going to start seeing these negative and positive populations start shifting a little bit to the right. So what I can do is I can actually make these specific for a particular data file, even though this is the same gate. If I click on this, I can just go to my gating tab, and you'll see now that I have a new tool to make this a data specific gate. So for example, I'm going to leave this one as the master, but I'll make this one data specific. I'll click my data specific gate tool, and then you'll see that now if I move that gate's going to be automatically independent of what we call the master gate. So this is still the master gate, and you can see that it's still going to move accordingly across all my tubes, but since this one is now data specific, it's going to move on its own, and the stats automatically update just for that particular gate. So the next example I want to show you is our cluster analysis tools that are now available. So in FCS Express 6, we now have the ability to do different types of transformations. So as we'll see in a second, you'll see that our interface has been reworked a little bit, where we've added several new tabs, and we've also added some new tools within these tabs. And specifically from our tools section, you'll see that we now have this transformations window. And from this transformations window, we can add some of these cluster analysis tools that we can now add to our analysis. And we can also, this is where we can also do our R integration, where we can add different parameters or do some cluster transformation through an R script that we can import into FCS Express. Okay. So the way this works is we can just simply select one from the plot, and then we can determine what the parameters are, how many clusters are going to be, and what gate is going to be assigned to it. And we can do that for k-means, and we can do that for t-SNE. And with t-SNE, we can either do an exact t-SNE, or we can do a Barnes-Hut approximation, which is a quicker version of the exact t-SNE algorithm. And we can format that according to our needs and how responsive we want that to be. So here you can see that what I've done is I've applied k-means to this histogram and also to this heat map. So this heat map is showing me 3 distinct clusters that I've determined as part of that k-means transformation. And we're also doing a t-SNE transformation, where we're looking at the different clusters that have been assigned. Okay, so you'll see that these are all going to automatically update in real time. So as I move my gate around, you'll see that these will automatically update. Since this is a heat map, each one of these wells is going to be colored off a particular stat. In this case, for this sample, it was CD28PE, and we're looking at the arithmetic mean, where anything that's has a low mean is going to be more red shifted, where anything with a high mean is going to be more blue or purple shifted. Okay, and then with the t-SNE, you can see where these clusters are forming these clouds, and with these Disney clusters I can gate these like any other population. I can look at these in another plot if I needed to. So the next example I wanted to show you is our heat maps. So with our heat map, we've took our heat map and we've added the ability to look at multiple statistics at the same time, and we just do that through overlays. So just like we can add overlays to our 1D or 2D plots, we can also add overlays to our heat maps now. And those different statistics are now represented through different colors in each one of these wells. What we've also done is we've given our users the ability to control the radius of these wells based off another statistic as well. So as I move this gate around, you can actually see how the colors for each overlay will automatically update, but also the statistic that controls the radius will automatically update too. So that way I can get 3 bits of information from one of these wells immediately. And the way this works is we can simply just format this plot. And you'll see now here that we have different options where we can control the radius parameter and what the stat is for that parameter. Now what I have here is basically an example of a report that is indicative of a particular application that one of our customers can use. But this sample is looking, this layout is looking at 8 different tubes that were combined together for a particular experiment. And what we've done is we've used a number of different spreadsheets to help summarize a lot of this data, where this information is coming directly from different plots in our layout. Okay, we can configure this report style format with as many tubes, as many pages, and we can put whatever whatever plots for whatever tube on any page that we want. And we can summarize it rather neatly in this report type format using these spreadsheets. But what we can also do is I can help standardize this analysis by creating an SOP. And I can actually do this now through our new SOP builder that can be located from the Quality tab. So if I click on my standard operating procedures, you'll see here that I can build a list of rules that need to be followed as part of this. So the idea is I can build a list of different conditions that need to be satisfied, and a user, as they're performing this analysis, cannot proceed to the next step until each one of these steps has been met. Okay? And the way we would do that is we simply click on the Run the SOP button, and the window that pops up is going to give you a description of the step, and it'll provide instructions as to what needs to be done to complete that step. So obviously this one, the first step is to load data. I've already loaded my data, so you can see here this button will allow me to go to the next step. You'll see in the background that I have a table that automatically updates when that particular step was completed, and I've moved on to the next step. And in this case, I'm looking to make sure that different stats are being calculated within this analysis will check within 10% of one another. If it turns out that they do, then I'm allowed to go to the next step. If not, I gotta investigate and dig a little bit deeper and see what's going on. But if it turns out it's okay, I can go on to the next step. And again, it's the same idea where I can just keep going and just make sure that each one of these conditions is met. The software automatically determines, or has the ability to determine, whether or not these particular conditions have been met. It's all according to your specifications. You can build this as you need to. But you'll see that once I get to this last step, what I need to do is I need to check a checkbox to make sure that everything is up to my specifications. And until I check that checkbox, I won't be able to do anything. So I can actually find that checkbox here in my summary data page. I need to verify all this. And once I check that, you'll see not only does that little text box disappear, my tab turns green. And if I go back to my report page, my table will tell me now everything's okay, and now I can actually just finish the SOP. Okay? Okay, so what I'd like to do is just like to start showing you how to perform a lot of the basic functions in FCS Express 6. So what I'll do is I'm just going to close this. I'm just going to go back to the original layout that we had. I'm going to just talk about the software in general. So the first thing I want to talk about is the overall interface. So as you can probably see, FCS Express 6 is modeled off the Microsoft Office um, interface. So anyone here that's used Microsoft PowerPoint, a lot of the same features that are done here in PowerPoint can also be performed here. We have a lot of the same conventions. You can undo, you can redo, we can customize the toolbar as we need to. We can put shortcuts to different functions up to as we need to up here. We have the ability to grab any tool that we need to from what we call the ribbon. The ribbon is this group of tabs up here, and on each tab are different tools that are grouped together according to their functionality. Down at the bottom of our FCS Express layout window, we can navigate between pages, so we can either go to the very first page, the very last page, or any of the pages in between. Okay. And then you can also see here that we have a page here, and we can just add pages like you would add pages in Microsoft Excel. So I can just click on a tab, or I can, if I need to add a page, I can just click on the last page button here, the new page button at the end of the line. I can zoom, I can access my user login, I can check to see if any of the background tasks have been completed, just to make sure that my system's up to date. If I get any errors, I can actually see what those error codes are, and I can clear them out if I need to, as we now provide a log for those different types of errors that may pop up. Okay. Also, what we have now is, as some of you are probably familiar, the startup screen. So the startup screen was something that we introduced in FCS Express 5. And the idea behind the startup screen is when you first log into FCS Express, the startup screen will appear. So this will provide a shortcut, an introduction to FCS Express, where if we need to access any recent documents, we can simply just do that here from the recent documents list, or if we want to create a new layout or open a specific layout that wasn't here in the list, we can do that directly from here. We can access a video guide, where the video guide shows us different quick clip tutorials as to how to perform a lot of basic functions in FCS Express. We can check to see whether or not we're on the most current update, and we can just go directly to our website to see any release notes that may be specific for that particular version. We can see examples. We can open up the tutorials so we can perform tutorials, and we can also see any recent news that's available from our website. So anytime we release a new update, or we have any new news to add and provide to our customers, we can actually do that here through the recent news section of the startup screen. Okay. If you also need to reach us, you can just click on support, and you can send us an email as you need to. Okay. So what we can also do is, we don't necessarily need this open, we can just simply close it, get it out of the way, or we can also tell FCS Express just to never show it to me again from now on. Okay, so now that I have a layout, I've added a page, all right, and just like in Excel, I can move these pages around. So if I actually wanted this page at the end, or if I wanted to place it somewhere, I could simply just drag it there, or I can undo that. Or maybe I just want to redo that, and I can redo that as well if I wanted to. But on this page, I can just start creating my analysis as I need to, just like I would create a PowerPoint presentation. So from the Insert tab, you're going to find a lot of the tools that you need to help analyze your data. So what we're going to do is we'll just start by choosing the type of plot that we want to use to analyze our data. For this case, I'm just going to choose a plain old colored dot plot. And when I select the tool and just click on my document, FCS Express will prompt you for the data file that you want to view within that plot. So I could just simply select a file, click open, and there's my file. So as it displays my file, I can click on the X or Y axis if I need to, just to change the parameters for that file. But what FCS Express does in the background, it takes all those files that were within that source folder, and it loads them into something called our data list. Okay, so if I go to my data tab, you'll see that there's an option for data list. If I click on that, here are the 4 files that were in that folder. It automatically loaded them into my data list, assuming that I wanted to work with them as well. Okay, so this data list is one of these dockable windows that are prevalent in FCS Express. So what we can do is we can actually just have these windows just hover over our data, and we can just move it out of the way as we need to, or what we can also do is we can dock them to the side. So as I move this around, you'll see that I have the ability to dock it either to the left, the right, or the bottom. Okay. If I just hover it there, you'll see that it's automatically docked. Everything moves over to accommodate that dock. But I also have the ability to pin it to auto hide it, so that way it just stays out of the way. And if I need to get something over there, I can just go over there and it automatically opens up and presents itself. So from this data list, what I can do is if I needed a particular file that I wanted to work with, I can actually just take this file and just drag it onto my layout. And I can create new plots for that particular file. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just select our density and histogram options. I'll click OK. And you'll see it'll create those particular plots for me automatically. Okay. And again, as I did before, I can go in here, I can pick some parameters. Depending on what I want to see. Okay. Now these, if I wanted to maneuver these, I could just simply just move them around, just grab it from the side. I can just drag this up here, move it around. If I wanted to resize it, I can just grab any vertex that you see here by these dots, make it bigger, make it smaller, do whatever I need. I can undo that. Or if I wanted to select these all at once, I can resize these all at once as I need to as well. Or I can undo that. And also, just like you can do in PowerPoint, if they're all selected, you can just go to the Home tab and you can align these either from the top, or you can evenly distribute them horizontally to line them up rather nicely and space them out evenly. Okay, so a lot of the same conventions that you can find in PowerPoint are available here to help arrange your data. You can also arrange if you wanted to send something to the front, or bring something to the front, or send to the back, or if you wanted to group different objects together, you can also do that here, just like you can do in PowerPoint as well. Okay. So some of the other things that we can insert from the Insert tab, we can insert shapes, we can insert text boxes, we can insert pictures, we can insert something called a data grid, and the data grid just shows us the raw values for each event that we've created, that we've collected, and we can see the raw value for each cell, for each parameter. We can insert something called a gate view, which I'll talk about in a second, that shows us all our gates and the relationship to one another. So if you have a master gate and all the children underneath that, you'll be able to see that through the gate view. The gate view acts as a way to display the hierarchy. We'll be able to create spreadsheets, and we'll be able to create any combination of 1D plots or 2D plots, or if I need to create a heat map like we saw earlier, I can do that all from the Insert tab. Okay. So now that I have all these plots, why don't we just go create some gates. So you'll see in the ribbon that we also have a gating tab that will have a lot of our gating tools that are available to us. So we can create elliptical gates, rectangular gates, polygon gates, freeform gates, or if I had a heat map, I can create what's called a well gate, where I can create a gate specific for one well, a row of wells, any combination of wells, whether they're adjacent or not. And that information can automatically update as well. Okay. So depending on what gate you want to use, you can just simply click on the gating tool. And then each click of the mouse will give you a different vertex on that gate for this polygon gate. Now when I close my gate, I'll be presented with this Create New Gate window. Okay. And within this Create New Gate window, we can give our gate a name. We can assign a color. We can determine whether we want this to be an inclusion or an exclusion gate. And what we can also do is we can emphasize these events on the plot. So by emphasize, what this does, it'll increase the dot size for the events within that gate, and you can actually view those emphasized events on other colored dot plots as well. So for example, if I click on emphasize and click OK, you'll see that it automatically increases the dot size. If I had another plot that was based off of that gate, if I drilled down on that plot and had parameters to reflect that as well, you'll see that the events that are within that gate are also emphasized on other color dot plots that are viewing that particular gate. And that all updates in automatic in real time. So it's a great way to help backgate on a particular population of interest, and you can see them a lot more clearly. Okay. Now, when we create gates, what we can do is we can just simply replace them. So once you start creating a gating strategy and an analysis strategy, you're going to have probably a pretty significant hierarchy. And at some point, you'll probably see that you probably made a mistake. Whether you created a gate in the wrong place, on the wrong plot, or maybe the wrong parameters. If you have to make a mistake, chances are you might have to delete that and start over again. But what we can do here in FCS Express is we can simply just replace a gate, so that way this new gate just slides right into the place of the old gate, and you don't really have to delete anything. Everything just slides in, and everything just stays consistent. Okay, so for example, if I wanted to replace this with a freeform gate, I can just simply click my freeform gate tool. I'll lasso my population, let go of my mouse, and within the create new gate window that shows up, rather than create a new gate, you'll see that there's an option to replace an existing gate. I can select that option, and then from the drop down menu I can select the gate that I want to replace. So whether I have one gate or 100 gates, I can simply select the gate that I want to replace and click OK. And you'll see that gate is automatically replaced. Any other plots that were looking at that gate automatically update. Since I did not have the emphasize option selected, you can see now that the cells here in this gate automatically went back to their regular size, their default size. Okay. So we have FCS Express has a lot of intuitive drag and drop capability enabled within it. You probably saw that first when I dragged my data file from the data list to start creating new plots. You've witnessed that when I created this plot down here just by taking this gate and dragging it to an open part of my layout to create a drill down plot on that gated data. But what I can also do is I can just simply drag this gate to apply it to another plot. Okay. And then once I do that, again, as I move my gates around, you can see automatically my data updates in real time. Okay. So with these particular objects that I have here, I can format them specifically. Let's say I actually want to format the title to show me the population that's the gate that's being displayed in that plot. So every object in FCS Express can be formatted, and we can simply do that just by right-clicking and choosing Format. Or we could just simply double click on a plot and we get the format option. So you'll see that one of the options that can be formatted for plots specifically is the title. So what we can do is we can type in here for the title. If I wanted to format all these plots, I can simply just hit Control A to select all, and I can go to my Format tab and format the title. I can put some information in here, so maybe I want to insert a keyword that's coming from my data, or maybe I just want to take the file name. Maybe I actually want to put in some information like the current gate. So I can select that from here as well. I can format the aesthetics of the title. So if I wanted to change the font around, or maybe put a border, or maybe some shadowing, or maybe I actually wanted to align that title more to the left, I can select those options here as well. Otherwise, I can click OK. And you can see that this automatically updates. Okay. So as I create more gates, if I apply this to a new plot, you'll see that will automatically update. Looks like we have a bug there. So I actually want to just add that down there. Okay, so we can drag and drop to apply different gates to our plots as we need to, provided these are actually the same data files. Okay. So once we start creating these different gates, how do we manage these gates? So we can manage these gates simply just by inserting a gate view. Okay, so from the Insert tab, you'll see that there's an option for a gate view, where if I just click on that and then click on my document, it'll provide me this tree-based view of all the different gates that are available to us in FCS Express. Okay, so what we can also do within these gates, as you see, if we add more gates to our analysis, the gates here will automatically be displayed. Okay. Within the gate view, we can also drag and drop. So if we need to rearrange gates to establish a different hierarchy, we can do that. Or if I need to drag and drop just to apply these, I can do that as well. There's a lot of drag and drop capability throughout the software in many different ways. Hopefully you can touch upon them as we go through this webinar, but hopefully you'll get the idea of the breadth of the drag and drop intuitiveness here in FCS Express. Okay. Now what I can also do here from my gate view is if I needed to delete a plot or if I needed to format it, let's say I actually wanted to change the name, I can just right click on it and just look at the gate properties, or I can just double click on it and the same window will come up. I can rename this here if I wanted to. I can also emphasize my events in this gate from here as well. Okay. Now you'll see here that what we've done here in FCS Express 6 is we've added the new ability to allow whether or not we want users to edit this gate. So as you're creating this, what we can do is we can establish this where we can allow people to edit this gate or not edit this gate. Or what we can do is we can provide some type of customization as you conditionally determine whether someone can edit that gate. So maybe you only want that the user to be able to edit that gate if it turns out a certain condition is true. Maybe you have X amount of cells above whatever criteria you've determined to be important for your particular application. All that is available now here as part of FCS Express 6. It's also available within our plots where, if I just go back to my format menu for a particular plot, you'll see here that we'll have the ability to give the user to determine whether or not something can be selected, or we can customize that and make it conditional as we need to, whether we can select it or actually edit a particular object. Okay. And as we kind of saw during the SOP example that we saw earlier, what we can do is we can determine whether or not different objects are visible, and we can make something either always visible or not visible, or we can base their visibility on some type of condition that's prevalent within the analysis as well. A lot of these different options can now be formatted, so whether we format quads or markers or particular gates, we can determine whether or not they can be edited or selected as needed. Okay. So we have these gates. So you'll see now from our gain tab, we now have the ability to add markers or quads to different plots as we need to. So to add a quad or a marker to a plot, we could simply just select the tool. So if I wanted to add a quad to this particular plot down here, I could just click on the quad tool, click within the plot, and you'll see I'll get a standard quadrant. So to manipulate that quadrant, I could just simply click on the center vertex. And I can just move it around as I need to. You'll see that these quads have the ability to come with stats automatically in each quadrant, and these stats by default are representative of the percent of gated cells within each quadrant. Okay. Now in FCS Express we have the ability to format the different quadrants that we can use. So again, if I just format a particular plot, or if I just double click on it to call up my format menu, you'll see that one of the options that are available to us is quads, where if I select my quads, I can select the type of quad that's available to me within that plot. So maybe I want something called a floating quad, where if I select that, what I can do is I can actually adjust the 5 endpoints that are available as part of that quad independently of one another. So if maybe I want to put the center point out there, maybe I want to put each one of these endpoints over here, or maybe I just want to join them together as much as I can. I can adjust each one of those vertices independently of one another, and I can just put them wherever I need to better fit the data within that plot. Again, if I go back to my format menu, you'll see that we have the ability to use percentile quadrants, where if we selected percentile quadrants, we can determine the percent of the cells we would expect to find in the lower left quadrant, either for the x-axis, the y-axis, or both. Okay. And as I mentioned earlier, With our quads, we have the ability to determine their visibility, so whether we want to make them visible or not visible, or whether or not we want to customize their visibility, and whether or not we want to allow people the ability to edit these markers, whether we want them to move them or not, or determine on a conditional basis of whether they're allowed to move them. All this ability is here, and you can really lock down an analysis if you need to, for whatever reason. Okay. So let me just create another plot. Let me just add another quad here. Now what we can do in FCS Express is we can link different quads together. So I'm just going to align these two. So let's say I actually want to link this quad with this quad over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to format this quad and go to the quads category, and down below you'll see that there's a section for our linking options. So if I just click on the drop down menu, you'll see that we have all these different options where I can select the different plot that I want to which I want to link that quad. I can select the plot. It'll show me a thumbnail of that plot, and I can click OK. So now if I move this particular plot, you should see that quad over there will move as well. Okay, so it's a great way to automate your analysis as you need to, and provide as few clicks as possible to help you get the results that you need. Okay. So with these gates, by default, our quads are not gates, but if we want to convert a quad to a gate, we can simply do that through a right click. So for example, if I right clicked on a plot, you'll see that there is a category for convert quads to gates. And what I can do is I can convert a particular quadrant to gate, but I can also convert a particular half to a gate. Okay, so let's say I want to take everything on the right half. I can convert and link that to a gate. And again, my create new gate window will pop up. I can give it a name and a color, and then it'll color everything on that right half for me automatically. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put another file in here. So rather than looking at sample one, the isotypic control, I'd like to actually look at something that has some data in it. So what I'll do is I'm going to take sample number 2, drag it to this plot, and then tell the software to just replace the data that's in there with the one that I'm dragging and dropping. See, that looks much better. All right, so now I actually have some data to look at rather than a simple control. Okay. What I'll do is I'll adjust that so we can put that back onto our lymph gate. There we go. So within our histogram, now what we can do is we can add a marker. So if I click on my marker tool, I can just drag to create my marker. To manipulate my marker, I can just move this around. If I want to adjust it, I can just click on the high bound and low bound and just either open it or close it to resize it. And then to move it, just click on the center vertex to just put it wherever I need to. Okay. If I click and make another marker here, what I can do is I can actually link these two markers together so that way they move in unison. So the way we can do that is if I format this particular plot, you'll see that there's a markers category where I can actually format the high bound to have the same coordinates as the low bound for the second marker. Okay, so for example, I'm going to take the low bound from number 1, and I'm going to link it to the high bound of marker 2. Okay, and the way I'm going to do that is just going to select marker 2. What I'll do is I'll lock it, and rather than these coordinates, I'm actually going to tell the software to use a statistic that's coming from that particular marker, that low bound. All right. So I'm going to choose statistic. We'll use that same plot, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually use marker 1 for the low bound. If I click preview, then you'll see that these two will snap. What I'll do is I'll lock these So that way we can just move these around if we need to, and then all you have to do is just move that center vertex. Okay, so it's a great way to standardize and just make it a little bit easier. Okay, so as those will lock those in place, if you want to actually move those around, you can actually just deselect the option to not move them around. So if I now click on this, oops, wrong one. I can now select that and you'll see that they move in unison. Okay, so we can put as many markers there and then we can just link them as we need to. Okay, so what we can also do is we can convert these markers to gates. So if I just right click on the histogram, you'll see that there's an option to convert marker to gate. I can select the marker that I want and I can link it to a gate. So let's say I actually want to take marker number 1, which is around this bright population. I can convert and link it, and what I'll do is I'm going to call it my CD5 positive cells. And as I do that, you'll see that it's automatically added to my gate view, and it's added as a child of my lymphs because that's the gate that's being displayed within that histogram. Okay. So in FCS Express, let's say we actually wanted to add an overlay to a particular plot. The way we can actually do that is through a number of different ways. So if I just right click on a plot, you'll see that there's an option from that right click menu to add an overlay. If I select that, I can navigate to any file that I want to use. So if I actually wanted to navigate to a particular file on the network somewhere that I've saved, I can do that. But I can also do that through drag and drop. So here I have my stain. I probably want to look at the control for that same file, right? So if I just go back to my data list, select the control, I can just take that, drag and drop it, and I can tell the software to add that as a new overlay. If I click OK, you'll see that the overlay that I just added is now in red. So there is my control. The gray is a sample. Again, you'll see that that data automatically updates as I move my data around. So if I wanted to format those overlays, again, I could just double click on my plot to call up my format menu, and you'll see that there's an overlays category where I have the different files that were overlaid. If I wanted to reorder those, I could just simply select them and just move them around. So that way one is brought up to the front, the other one's sent to the back, depending on how I want to order that in there. I can also format the aesthetics for each one. So if I wanted to change the color of that peak, or if maybe I wanted to fill it in, I can either select one or I can select both. I can tell the software to fill it in, and I can provide some transparency. So if I wanted to see between each of those, I can smooth these out if I wanted to make them not so jagged. And I can preview that, and then I can see what I have here. Okay, so we can really format these plots as we need to on the fly. And again, as we move these around, you should see that that data will automatically update in real time as well. Okay, so we have all these gates, we have all these plots. How do we get some statistics? All right, so to get some statistics, we can simply just right click on a plot. And when we right click on a plot, you'll see that there's this statistics category that we can either select gate statistics or quadrant statistics or histogram stats. The idea behind this is pretty much the same. So what we can do is if we want to edit the information that's in here, we can simply just right click. We can select or deselect the stats that we want to show in that box, or as I mentioned earlier, every object that you create in FCS Express has a format option to it, and these stat boxes are no different. So if I right click on one of these, I can go to my format tab. I can format the different stats that are available or displayed within that. I can format the font or whatever decimal point I want to see, whether I actually want to see this in scientific notation. I can format the aesthetics of this if I want to put a border around this, or if I just want to format the size. And just like the others, I can format the authorizations where I can give people the ability or take away the ability to either select this or edit this stat box. Or I can just edit the gates that are being displayed in here. So by default, we're looking at all the gates, but I can just tell the software to just show the gates below, or all the gates except the ones that are selected below. And then once I format it, click OK, we'll get our final look as we formatted that. So our quads and our histogram stats can be formatted in much the same way. Okay. So this can be great. These stat boxes give us a lot of information, but chances are you probably want to customize our stats, the stats that are available to you, because you probably, out of all these stats, maybe you just want this number over here, maybe you just want the number of events for this gate, maybe you just want the percent of cells from this particular quadrant, maybe you just want to know what the median is from that sample located in M1. Okay. What we can do is we can actually take all that information and summarize that rather easily into a customized table that we can create. Okay, so just like we can create a table in Excel or Word or PowerPoint, we can do the same here in FCS Express. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to insert a text box. So from the Insert tab, I'm just going to click on Text Box. Click and drag to create it. Okay, so now it's drawn. Within this text box, it's a text box. So you can type in some plain text. Within this text box, we can highlight the text. We can go to our Text tab, which has a full text editor, where we can change the font, the sizing, the styling, a color, maybe some background color, or whether we want to left align, center align, or right align, or whether we want to increase the indent, decrease, or provide some bulleting and numbering. Okay. The idea is that this is plain text. Okay. So FCS Express has two different ways of how it can deal with text. So we can create plain text. We can also create something called tokens, which are live text. So by live text, I mean that it's dynamic. So as we insert a token, that token can be a statistic, for example. That statistic can automatically update according to how we move our gates around. So for example, you'll notice that with all these gates that we've inserted, these gates by default will come up with statistics in these little text boxes for each gate. And as we move these gates around, these statistics will automatically update as we move that gate around. So these are all tokens within these text boxes. So you'll see that we have a token here for my lymphs gate, for gate 1, for these markers, and also for these quads, where all these bits of information are dynamic and will automatically update as our data is updated. Okay. So that's what a token is, and what we can do is we can insert a token in these text boxes. So if I just right click on a text box, you'll see that the first option that's available to me is our insert token option. So if I just right click and choose that insert token option, you'll see that there are many different token options that we have available to us. So we can take tokens that are either statistics, or we can extract keyword information. So for those of you that aren't familiar with keywords, what keywords are metadata that are written into the file header for the data that you collect, and they're typically specific for the instrument that you use to collect your data, as different manufacturers like to have a combination of the universal keywords, but also a combination of their own proprietary keywords that are just specific to their platform. What we can do is we can extract those keywords. Maybe we have some information that we wrote as an identification for the sample that we've collected that we want extracted for us automatically. Or what we can do is we can take different bits of information of our layout. Maybe we want to know what page we're on, or maybe we just want to know, what the quad vertices are within a plot. We can extract all this information as a token and insert that into a plot. So the two most common types of tokens that our customers use are statistic and keyword tokens. So for example, if I wanted to insert a token that was specific for the number of lymph events, I'm going to select statistic. I'll click on insert. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select the plot that I want to use as the data source. So where is my lymph gates? Where is this information coming from? You'll see here that I have a list of all the different plots available to me within my layout. So whether I have 5 plots or 500 plots, I can simply select the plot that I want to use. I'll go to statistic, and then I just work from the top down. So I don't really have a quad, but I do have a gate that I want to select, plus a statistic. And then I can format that stat. So again, if I wanted to change the decimal points or the rounding mode, or let's say I actually wanted to show this in scientific notation, which is a new FCS Express 6 feature, I can simply select these options here and then just click OK. And you'll see now that I get a value for that token. And as I move my gate around, just like before, you'll see that information will automatically update too. Okay. So the idea is, whether it's plain text or dynamic text, it all just looks like text. So once I've deselected that text box, it just looks like text. The plain text is static; it just stays what it is. The text will, the token will update as you would expect. But we can also just update either the plain text or live text as we need to. Let's say we just wanted to take away the bold or the italicizing, we want to left align it. We can still format that as we need to, just like with any type of text. Okay, so we can use these tokens as a way to summarize our data. So whether we had multiple pages here, we can create a page that acts as a summary page to sum up our experiment and give us the information that's really important about this particular experiment. And we can do that within one of these text boxes. So here what I'll do is I'll just delete this text box. I'll just create a fresh new text box just by inserting it. And again, if I right click within this text box, you'll see that there's this table category. So within this table, I can just create it just like I would in Word, and I would just determine the number of cells or the number of columns or number of rows that I want for this particular table. And within this table, I can simply type in there, and I can also insert tokens within these cells, within the cells of these tables. So if I just right click within a cell, I can go through the process of selecting the token that we just saw. But I can also insert my tokens through by dragging and dropping. So I can drag and drop a gate, I can drag and drop a plot within these cells and get the information that I need. So let's say I actually want some information that's going to be indicative of some type of identification for the sample that I'm collecting. I can select what plot I want to use. So since these plots have different tubes being displayed at the same time, I could just select whatever plot I want. I could just drag this into that cell. I can select the type of token that I'm going to use. In this case, it's going to be a keyword token. I'll click OK. And then I can click from the drop-down menu and just navigate through the file header and just determine what token I want to use within this file. Okay. So if I just click down, you'll see all these different keywords that are going to pertain to the parameter name or the parameter stain. But I'm looking for something that's going to pertain to some type of identification. I'm going to use that particular keyword. If I choose that keyword, I'll click OK. You'll see that FCS Express will provide the value for that keyword just by dragging and dropping. Okay. Now if I want a statistic, I could just right click to insert, or I can just drag and drop that plot and choose statistic token this time. But if I wanted a particular gate, I could just drag this gate into the cell and then just choose the stat. And again, that stat will automatically update as well. Okay, so whether it's a gate, or maybe let's say I wanted to add another row, I'm just going to go to my text tab. I'll add a row below. I can actually just drag my marker to get my median. So let's say I want the median marker number 1. And there it is. Okay. So again, as I update this, you'll see that that information will change. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'll just edit this so I can make it fit on my page. So these tables can really come in rather handily, where we can use these as a way to summarize our data, so that way we can just look at this table and see what kind of information we're gathering, so we can get instant results as we're analyzing our data. So we can do that in a table, but we can also do that within a spreadsheet. So if I go to my Insert tab, you'll see that in FCS Express 6 we've added the ability to create a new spreadsheet. So if I just click on that, I can give my spreadsheet a name. And this spreadsheet works very much like a spreadsheet in Excel. Okay. So what I can do is I can use this spreadsheet as a way to summarize. So I can just put like a lot of the same information that you see here in this table, or I can take the data from my data list. Let's say I actually wanted the data for these two particular samples. I can actually just drag them over here onto my spreadsheet. And when I do that, I can just choose the parameter. Let's say I actually want, let's say we'll choose that parameter from this gate, and I want the file name, I want the number of events, and I want percent of gated cells. And then you'll see it'll provide that information in the background for me automatically. Okay. Now within these cells, I can also just simply type. So let's say I actually just wanted to, put in. I can actually just type in whatever I wanted, but let's say actually I wanted some statistics to come directly from any of these tables. I can actually just select a row or a column and just drag this over there as well. Okay. If I select one of these cells, I can go to my spreadsheet tab, and my spreadsheet tab is broken up in either to my layout or my formula tab. So if I wanted to clear the contents of a particular cell, I can simply select it. Or if I wanted to cut, copy, and paste, I can do that as well. All right. So within this spreadsheet, let's say I actually wanted to just take an average or some type of formula based off of those two. I can go to my formula tab. I can create an average, and you'll see that FCS Express will create the average within that column on the spreadsheet directly. Okay. Now let's say I actually wanted to create a ratio. I can actually just take a ratio here as well. And for this ratio, let's say I actually want to take the ratio of this first number divided by the second number. I can just put in my equal sign. I can just create my ratio just like I would in Excel, where I'll just tap on the cell, the math sign, and then just tap on the next cell and click enter, and I get my number. And I can also just copy and paste that to the next cell as well. Okay, and then when I double click on that, it'll show you the two cells that make up the variables for that particular statement. And within these cells, what we can also do is we can do conditional formatting. So maybe I just want to see some coloring between the very high values or the very low values. If I just go back to my spreadsheet tab, click on the layouts, you'll see that there's a section for conditional formatting where I can just choose the color scheme that I want to use. So red for the very low, green for the very high, or I can undo that. Then again, if I just go back, I can also make my own rules as I need to. Okay, so if I wanted to determine, let's say, that format the cells that are only, if it turns out they're only greater than a particular value. So if my cells are greater than, 1,000, I could tell the software just fill these cells, let's make it green. Okay, and if it turns out that number changes, then that color would change too if it was below that threshold that I created. Okay. So there's a lot of different features here available within these spreadsheets. I won't talk about all of them. We'll have a webinar that focuses on more of these specific features later on throughout the fall. Okay. But now, let's say we actually want to export this data. So we have all these stats, we have a table, we have a spreadsheet. Maybe we want to export this data. Well, Now we have this spreadsheet. What if we wanted to export this spreadsheet directly to Excel? Well, if I just click on this spreadsheet, if I go back to my spreadsheet tab and layout, you can see I can actually export this directly to Excel if I want to manipulate it even more. Where if I click on it, I can export it as an Excel sheet, I can export it as CSV, or if I wanted to, I could work with it as XML or text. I can do that directly. What I can also do is I can export my data to PowerPoint, or I can export to PDF, or I can export different images. And I can also do that, incorporate that all as part of my batch processing capabilities. So once I'm actually done, chances are I probably want to take this data and export it all at once and have the software do that for me automatically. So from the Batch tab, I can click on Batch Actions. And my batch actions are a way for me to build a pipeline for all the different formats that I want to produce my results. So you'll see here that we have the ability to add these different actions. So we would click on an action. Let's say I actually wanted to have the software print my data after I was done. So I would just simply add a print action. I would click OK. That print action is added to the list. Okay. Now, if I didn't want to print, I can actually just deselect this button, and as I go to perform batch processing, FCS Express will just skip over this step for me. So I can actually just leave it in the list and just automatically select it or deselect it as I needed to. What I also have here available to me are different actions that help me either archive my data, so it would actually save a copy of my data within this template that we'll build without overwriting an original template. I can also export my data directly to PowerPoint. Okay. So when I select my PowerPoint presentation, what I can do is I can tell the software, whether or not you want to open automatically after PowerPoint, after exporting to PowerPoint, and what pages do you want to be created as part of this PowerPoint presentation. So whether you want all pages, just the current page that's being viewed, or a range of pages, and then you can just designate what that range of pages are. What I'll do is I'm just going to make the current page, and what I'll also do is I'm going to combine all this data into one particular PowerPoint, because I can also, if I wanted to, export each one individually and make its own PowerPoint presentation. I also have the ability to append to an existing PowerPoint presentation, and if I do that, I can tell the software to save to that appended file, or just create that appended file as just a brand new separate PowerPoint presentation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to combine them all, and what I'll do is I'll save as an empty file, and I'm going to save it as a brand new file. So what I'll do is I'm going to specify where I want the software to automatically save this for me. So what I'll do is I'm going to save this in the same folder where my data is located. I'm going to give it a name and just click Save. Okay, so it's going to save it in that location. I'm just going to click OK, and I'll just add it to the list. So now that we have a print and a PowerPoint option selected, maybe we want to add the ability to save our data as a PDF. So I can actually just click on Save as PDF. And again, it's similar to the PowerPoint where I would tell the software, do I want all pages to be saved to PDF, or maybe just a current page? Do I want to save everything into one PDF, or do I want to save everything individually? In this case, what I'd like to do is save everything individually. I'm not going to append, but I will save everything as a new file, so that way all the different samples that I'm analyzing are going to have their own PDF, their own unique PDF. Okay, so if I again click on the file icon, I could just specify where I'm going to save that. So I'll save that in the same folder as the data, where the data is located. I'll just give it a name. But what I want to do is I also want the software to name these files for me to use specific information. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the software extract some keyword information to automatically name these files for me. So I can do that through a token. So you'll see here that there's a T where if I just click on the T, I can specify to insert a keyword token within that location. And I can just use that same keyword that I used earlier. I'll just put a space in there, and I can click OK. So now the software is going to automatically export my data into PowerPoint and to PDF, and it will uniquely name the PDF file automatically for me. Okay. I can also export my data as a picture. So again, I can just specify where I'm going to save my data. I can specify the image type that I want, so I can export my data as a JPEG, a bitmap, a metafile, a GIF, a PNG, or a TIFF. I can use, again, a token to automatically name my data for me. I'll use the same keyword as I did before. And what I can also do is I can specify the resolution. So I can use the same resolution that we see on my screen, so what you see is what's exported, or I can make this a super high resolution image just by designating the DPI. And then finally, I can select the object that I want exported as an image. So whether I select a particular plot or a text box or a full page of my layout, I can select that and just click OK. And then it's added to the list. Okay. So we can export our data to Excel too. All right. So what we can do is we can just, there are two different ways of how we can export our data to Excel. So we can export our data to column mode, where it's just a basic export to Excel where every column is a particular stat, each row is a different sample. Or if we wanted to work with a specific spreadsheet, then we can use cell mode where we export different stats and then we tell FC Express to put specific stats in certain addresses within a spreadsheet template. So maybe you wanted a sample name to go in cell A1 or a picture of a plot to go in cell D10. We would actually use a cell mode Excel export to do that. In this case, what I'll do is I'll just demonstrate the column mode. Again, I'll just designate where I'm going to save that. And we'll click OK. And then what we do is we just designate the stats that we want to export. So for example, we can do that through tokens just by adding different tokens to the report. But I can also just drag and drop directly from my analysis. So if I had a table like this, I can actually just take this table, and any column, any token that's in there will automatically be added as part of that Excel export. I can also take data from this statistical table and drag it. I can also add spreadsheet tokens. So you'll see that one of the token types that we have here referred to specific cells in my spreadsheet. So if I select that, I can click on Insert, specify the spreadsheet that I'm using, and then what cell address do I want. So in this case, maybe I want D4. Click OK. So the idea is that FCS Express is going to do this for each iteration that I'm analyzing. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're also going to talk about how we're going to group our samples. So if I go back to my data list, you'll see here that we have two samples. One, they're each made up of a control and a stain, but right now, as the way that it's laid out, we basically have the software thinking that it's 4 iterations when it's really 2 samples that we're going to be analyzing. So how do we deal with this? So from our batch tab, you'll see that we have the increment value that refers to the iteration value. So if I actually have 2 samples, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click in this field and just type in 2, and then you'll see how the software automatically updates the iteration grouping here within my data list. So this is my first sample, this is my second sample. If I just click on the iteration number, you see how the software automatically loads that data on my layout. Okay, so the way the template was created is going to dictate which sample is going to be displayed in which plot. Okay, so this plot is looking at the control sample and the others are looking at the stain sample. So when I go from iteration 1 to iteration 2, it's going to keep that relationship and apply the correct tubes in that same order. Okay. So when we do batch processing is going to base the batch processing off of these iterations. It's going to treat these groups as each separated iteration. So we have one iteration being shown at a time in this analysis. Okay. So now, what we can also do is we have the ability to save these iteration groupings as panels. So we can either simply group them, but we can also create what we call a panel. So down here at the bottom of my toolbar, and you can also see up here within the batch tab, there's this panels tool. So what we can do is we can actually just create something similar where, we just give this a name. We'll specify how many tubes make up this panel. We can provide a label for these tubes. and then we'll have a panel. You can see now it's marked active. If I click OK, if I go back to my data list, you'll see now that my data list lists each iteration still as number 1, number 2, but now it's actually designated each tube specifically as I named it within that panel. Now the benefit of using this rather than just determining the increment value is if I save this as a template now, when I come back and load this data, the data will automatically load in the background for me. So now if I save this as a template, I'm going to go to File, Save As. What I'll do is I'm going to save it in my export folder, and I can give this a name. So I'm just going to call this my basic template. And then the Save As type, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select Unlinked Data. So this is actually going to save it as a blank, empty layout. If I just click Save, it'll save it. What I'll do is I'm going to close this. I happen to have a blank layout in back of me, but now I can actually just open it directly from my documents list, or if I had my startup screen still open, I could just simply select that from the recent documents list as well. Okay? So what I'll do is I'll go back to that page that we created. You can see everything is blank. Now all I need to do is just load my data into my data list. So if I have my data list I've saved over here, I'm just going to simply click on the plus sign, navigate to my data. I can select a file, click open, and you'll see that the software will prompt you, do I want to automatically add the next one since it was a 2-tube panel? I can click yes. You'll see it automatically loads it in, and the data updates automatically in the background too. Okay, now I can also add the second sample here. I can just simply select both files and just click open, and now I have my 2 iterations. If I just click on the iteration number, I can just choose that as I need to. Okay, so now as part of this template, you'll see that we also have all the batch actions that we created are also saved as well. Okay, so our spreadsheet is showing some of these errors, but that's just because when we first dragged and dropped all 4 of those files that were in that data list. So that's fine. Yeah, that's okay, because right now we're just working with the context of these medians, which we dragged and dropped directly from this table here, so we don't really care about these. So if I wanted to, I can actually just select all these, and I can just go back and just clear those out if I need to. Same thing with these ratios. I'm not really exporting them, but that's okay. So now if I wanted to do batch, I can just simply click on the Run button. But before I click on the Run button, we can talk about some options where we can actually have the software unconditionally pause between each one of these iterations as we need to. So this would actually give us the opportunity to adjust the gates between each sample. So the first sample would load, we can adjust the gates, then as we progress through batch processing, each of the exports will be produced, where each sample will go to PDF or the image or the PowerPoint, and then the next sample will be loaded, and then FCS Express will pause. It'll give us the opportunity to adjust the gates as we need to for that sample, and then we can just continue with the batch processing step. So if I just simply select that and click OK, I can just click on Run. So you'll see here that I have 4 different actions that are being performed. I have 2 different iterations as are defined within the data list. Okay. So now if I can actually just move this to the side, if I need to move these gates around, I can do that. If I want to put that there, if I want to put this one over here, if I want to move these quads around or that marker around, I can do that, and I can click Continue or Run to End. And then what you'll see is you'll see the batch export options that we've designated. So each sample will get its own PowerPoint slide. All right, so you'll see that all the different objects in the PowerPoint within FCS Express are exported as PowerPoint objects. So I can just manipulate these around. You'll see that if I zoom in on these are high resolution graphics, so they will make for a nice presentation. If you wanted to go into slide mode, you can do that directly from here. And you can see here that each slide will be produced for each sample that we need to analyze. Now, whether every object that we have was on the paper or in the margin, you can see that everything was exported as part of that slide, and then we can simply just work. Everything that's on the paper is what's going to be displayed when you go into presentation mode. Now, here's the Excel sheet. So whatever stats we've designated to be exported to Excel, that's what's gone to Excel as well. So if I wanted to work with these more closely and manipulate these a little bit more, I can do that directly from here as well. Now if I open up the export folder where I sent my data, you can see all the other different options that we had. So there's my PDF, there's my image, there's my high-res TIFF, so if I wanted to send that to my publisher, I could. And there's my PowerPoint, my stats. So you can see how we can automate this process rather easily. So this is all built into the template. I can use this template over and over again for this experiment, and everything is built in automatically into it. Okay. So we've gone over quite a bit of stuff. As a basic overview, there are so many features in here that we've gone into quite a bit of depth. But as I mentioned, we will be releasing other webinars that focus more on the details of each feature. And it won't be this high level overview, it'll just focus on a specific feature like gating or batch processing or any of the new features that we've released specifically in version 6. But as I want to wrap it up, in summary, I just want to say that FCS Express 6 gives you an intuitive Microsoft Office interface that can enhance your learning experience and use to help you analyze your flow or imaging data. As you've seen, the interface provides a very intuitive interaction with the user where they can do a lot of the same type of actions and workflow processes that you would do in Microsoft Office, whether it's PowerPoint or Word, Excel. If you wanted to drag and drop, or if you just wanted to insert things from the intuitive insert menu, you can do that as well. FCS Express 6 is a sophisticated data analysis and reporting software all in the same package. So if you needed to export something directly from PowerPoint, you can do that here. Or if you need to prepare an image for a publication, you can do that directly in here. If you want to do some type of statistical analysis in Excel, you can actually do this here as well within a spreadsheet. You don't necessarily have to export it to Excel. If you want to do regression, you can also do that in here as well. FCS Express 6 is compatible with both Windows and the Mac OS platforms. As I mentioned, FCS Express 6 is our first venture into the Mac platform, so we're super excited about that, and we've got some really great feedback about that so far. And finally, FCS Express 6 offers a quick and responsive real-time analysis of your data, as I've demonstrated today. As you move your gates around, you can see the responsiveness and how FCS Express updates in real time to give you real information of your data as you're moving things around. Okay. So at this, I'd like to say if you have any questions, please contact us at support@denovosoftware.com. You can also visit us at fcsexpress.com if you're interested in trying out a free 30-day trial. The trial is fully featured. You can try your own data, but we also have sample data that you can download from our website and try it out with the tutorials that are provide step-by-step instructions to do some of the basic functions within FCS Express. Okay, so if there are any questions, thank you for joining me. Have a good day. As I mentioned, if you do have any questions after this webinar is over, please feel free to email us at support@denovosoftware.com. Thank you, and I look forward to hearing from you.